Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome here. This is meeting number 50 of the Standing Committee on Public Accounts, Monday, April 13th, 2017. And I remind everyone today that we are televised, and so not just for the ones in our audience, but also for committee members, if you can put your Blackberries or your iPads or whatever you have on airplane mode, or at least on mute, and that will save some difficulties during our meeting. Today we're holding a hearing on Report 4, Oversight of Passenger Vehicle Safety, from the Fall 2016 reports of the Auditor General of Canada. Appearing before us we have, from the Office of the Auditor General of Canada, Mr. Michael Ferguson, the Auditor General of Canada, and Richard Domingue, the Principal. And from the Department of Transport, Mr. Michael Keenan, Deputy Minister, Ms. Elena Borge, Associate Deputy Minister, Laureen Kinney, Assistant Deputy Minister, Safety and Security, and Kim Benjamin. Are we right on all? We are. Okay. Director General, Road Safety and Motor Vehicle Registration. I understand each of our witnesses has an opening statement before we turn to questions from the Member of Parliament in our committee, and so I will invite our Auditor General to proceed with his opening statement, please. Welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, thank you for this opportunity to present the results of our audit on the oversight of passenger vehicle safety by Transport Canada. Vehicle safety technology is evolving faster than regulations and standards. Transport Canada faces challenges in exercising its important role of keeping passenger vehicles safe. An up-to-date regulatory framework and the proper oversight of passenger vehicle safety help to ensure that Canadians are driving the safest vehicles possible. We examined whether Transport Canada's regulatory framework and its oversight of vehicle safety defects and recalls were adequate to respond to emerging safety risks and issues in a timely manner. We noted a number of significant deficiencies in the regulatory framework, including a lack of timeliness, an absence of broad stakeholder consultation, and outdated regulations.
We found that Transport Canada did not develop motor vehicle safety standards to respond to emerging risks and issues in a timely manner. For example, Transport Canada's regulations did not allow vehicles to be equipped with advanced headlights that are controlled by software. At the same time, however, unregulated semi-autonomous vehicles are being driven on Canadian roads. We found that in general, Transport Canada waited for the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration in the United States to develop new or amended standards before proposing regulatory actions in Canada. This reactive approach created significant delays in implementing new standards and meant that some passenger vehicles were not equipped with the newest safety features available in other countries, such as the aforementioned advanced headlamps. There were lengthy delays, sometimes of more than 10 years from the time that Transport Canada started to work on an issue to the implementation of new or amended standards. Prior to making proposed regulations in public in Canada Gazette, Transport Canada consulted with manufacturers, but did not engage broadly with stakeholders such as consumer associations, medical associations, and police. Therefore, manufacturers may have exercised disproportionate influence on regulatory decision-making. We found that some important standards were not working as intended or were outdated. For example, Transport Canada was aware that child seat anchorages could fail under certain conditions, but it had not proposed a new regulation or issued an advisory by the audit completion date. The department stated that introducing a unique to Canada requirement for anchorage strength in passenger vehicles would be detrimental to trade.
Research and regulatory activities for the longer term. As a result, the department could not prioritize resources and spending decisions accordingly. For example, between April 2012 and December 2015, the department purchased 98 passenger vehicles for research testing. As of December 2015, 24 of these vehicles, costing over $500,000, remained untested. The department told us that unpredictable funding contributed to this situation. Finally, we looked at Transport Canada's oversight and analysis of public complaints and manufacturers' recalls. Overall, we found that the department adequately assessed complaints from the public to identify vehicle safety defects. However, the department did not request information about critical safety issues that manufacturers were investigating. As well, manufacturers issued 318 recalls between 2010 and 2015 for safety-related issues that were not brought to the department's attention. Furthermore, the department did not have the authority to assess whether manufacturers implemented effective processes for identifying and reporting safety defects. This limited the department's ability to investigate defects and better protect Canadians. We found that Transport Canada adequately assessed vehicle manufacturers' efforts to complete safety recalls. However, manufacturers had difficulty identifying and contacting owners for some recalled passenger vehicles, especially for owners with older vehicles. Transport Canada has agreed with our 7 recommendations and has prepared a detailed action plan. Monsieur le Président, je termine ainsi ma déclaration.
Mr. Chair, this concludes my opening statement. We'd be pleased to answer any questions the committee may have. Thank you.
Mr. Ferguson. We'll now move to the Deputy Minister, Mr. Keenan. I believe this is his first time appearing before Public Accounts Committee. We thank you for being here today, and we look forward to your comments.
Mr. Chair, thank you very much for the welcome. Happy to be here today and look forward to the opportunity to discuss the Auditor General's 2016 Report 4 on oversight of passenger vehicle safety. I'd also like to thank the Office of the Auditor General for a very thorough and comprehensive review of our motor vehicle safety program. The Department welcomes this review. It's a key opportunity for us to improve the safety of the performance of our safety program by identifying rigorously areas for improvement. The safety of Canadians and their confidence in the motor vehicle safety regime is a key priority for the Government of Canada. The safety of motor vehicles in Canada has been steadily improving over the past 3 decades. In the early 1970s, there were approximately 6,000 deaths and 25,000 serious injuries every year from motor vehicle collisions. At the time, there were approximately 12 million registered vehicles and about 13 million drivers. In 2014, the last year for which there is complete data, Canada had about double that, 25 million drivers and 23 million vehicles. But the number of fatalities had declined to 1,800, and serious injuries to 9,600. In essence, the number of vehicles and drivers, the number of kilometers driven had about doubled, and the number of Canadians killed or injured had fallen by 60 or 70%. À des fins d'amélioration continue.
To support continued improvement to motor vehicle safety, Transport Canada has responsibility for the development of standards and regulations for new and imported vehicles, tires, and child restraints. The department also has a robust safety defect program, which entails the assessment and investigation of public complaints and other indicators to aid in the determination of a vehicle safety issue.
Manufacturer defect notifications and follow-up to ensure that defects are remedied. The audit focused on these 3 areas. In general, the audit noted that there were some areas where the department did a good job and other areas where there is clearly a need for improvement. The audit noted that not all standards and regulations were developed in a timely manner. In addition, it was felt that the department did not consult widely enough on proposed changes, often just consulting manufacturers in the early development of regulations. In response, Transport Canada has committed to publishing additional information on planned regulatory amendments on its website and to seek broader involvement of other stakeholders and experts, such as the insurance industry and other key players in the pre-consultation phase of the process. Another concern identified by the audit was that the department did not have complete and timely collision and injury data and did not demonstrate how research informed the development of safety regulations. In Canada, the collection of collision data, such as basic collision characteristics, crash configuration, vehicle type, etc., is conducted by police officers and reported to provincial and territorial governments, who provide Transport Canada with data to populate the National Collision Database. The department is assessing this data against its regulatory needs and developing an action plan to improve data quality and timeliness. Transport Canada is also committed to increasing the transparency of the use of data in the development of regulations. The process to codify this transparency has been implemented, and a summary of the assessment of evidence and research will be more clearly outlined in the regulatory impact analysis statements that are published as part of the regulatory process in the Canada Gazette. The report noted a need for a long-term operational plan and stable, sustainable funding. The department is working on the development of such a plan for the crash worthiness research program. The development of this plan will include an assessment of the linkages between research and the regulatory planning processes, and a review of program priorities. This longer-term operational plan is intended to improve the funding sustainability of the program. One always likes to look on the positive side. On the positive side, the OAG noted that Transport adequately assessed complaints from the public to identify vehicle safety defects. In particular, it recognized that in 2016, departmental officials identified a potentially dangerous defect in the rear seat belts of the Toyota RAV4 vehicles. The implicated seat belts had the potential of rupturing during collisions and causing death or serious harm. The discovery of this defect led to a recall of nearly 150,000 RAV4s in Canada, and globally, over 2.7 million vehicles have been affected by the discovery of this issue in Canada. The OAG found that the program adequately assessed and tracked manufacturers' efforts to complete safety recall campaigns. Now, Transport Canada also continues to work to identify means to help improve those completion rates, including the development of improved messaging on the importance of having the remedy completed. It also envisaged that proposed changes to the Motor Vehicle Safety Act contained in Bill S2 will help to improve recall completion repair rates by providing the minister the ability to order the manufacturer to bear the financial burden of conducting the repair to the vehicle. An issue with the defect noted in this audit is the lack of information regarding manufacturers' internal investigations to identify safety defects. This is an area that needs to be addressed, and the issue is actually one of the measures that would be addressed through the passage of Bill S2. The Bill S2 is working its way through the parliamentary process, and the department continues to support the bill to help ensure that the safety benefits of the changes that are in that legislation can be realized. It was also recommended that the department request manufacturers provide information on their safety processes. We have made the request to manufacturers and will review the information as it is received to determine how to incorporate it into the defect program. Les véhicules automobiles sont essentiels au bien-être social et économique.
Motor vehicles are very important to the social and economic well-being of Canadians. The social cost of these collisions is estimated at $36 billion annually, not to mention the impact on Canadian families. Transport Canada is working to help limit the impact of vehicle defects on this number and to support new vehicle safety technologies, which can help, ideally, mitigate the severity of a crash, should a crash occur, or ideally increase the collision avoidance capabilities of the driver-vehicle operation.
En outre, nous travaillerons avec
Road Safety Strategy 2025. Together with these efforts, including the action plan in response to the Auditor General's report, we can make Canada's roads safer as we work towards our aspirational goal of zero deaths on our roads. I apologize. Mr. Chair, we look forward to the committee's questions and comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We'll go into the first round of questioning, and goes to Ms. Shanahan, please, for 7 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I'm glad to be back here with the committee, as I am glad to see you back with the committee as well. Thank you very much. And I'm glad to see the representatives of Transport Canada here as well back, and Mr. Keenan, yourself. Where do I start? This report disturbed me greatly when the Auditor General first presented us with his with the reports, with all the reports that we have on a regular basis. Why? Because, not that I know anything about cars, I just know how to drive one, but because of the confidence and the trust that Canadians have in Transport Canada to ensure that the cars that we are driving are safe. So yes, I certainly agree that cars are a lot safer. I think we can applaud manufacturers for taking that responsibility seriously. I find it interesting that you will be consulting with the insurance companies, but let us not forget that insurance companies are interested in reducing the payout of claims, so they have a special interest. I find it interesting that other stakeholders who have a vested interest in the safety of Canadians have yet to be consulted. And I deplore the fact that the very reason for the vehicle safety regulations is to indeed prevent accidents from happening, and that seems to be something that has slipped the operations and the mandate of Transport Canada. And in saying so, I go just to the Auditor General's report, paragraph 422. We found that Transport Canada did not maintain an up-to-date regulatory framework for passenger vehicle safety. There were lengthy delays, sometimes more than 10 years from the time work began on an issue to the department's implementation of new standards or changes to existing one. We found that Transport Canada had discussions with manufacturers prior to announcing its intention to implement or modify a particular regulation in the Canada Gazette. These consultations often went beyond technical feasibility issues, which contributed to these delays. And finally, we found that Transport Canada did not systematically consult with other important stakeholders, such as vehicle parts, equipment suppliers, insurance companies, medical associations, and the police. I would like to know now, what were those discussions about with the manufacturers, and why were the other stakeholders not consulted?
Well, thank you for the question, and in fact, thank you for about 4 questions. So I'll work my way through that. I think I apologize. I probably was too brief in my introductory comments, because I'll start with the question about the consultations on the regulatory process where you ended. It was one of the key themes. And as you indicated, the Auditor General found some faults and weaknesses in how we consult and who we consult. And we have agreed to the department has committed to change the process by which it develops the regulations. First and foremost, the regulations are actually put into the public domain through the regulatory process. There's an initial draft regulation through the Canada Gazette that goes out for all Canadians. there's an official comment period where we take comments from all Canadians. And then there's a final set of regulations that's published in the Gazette. I think that you're referring to is the fact that in the preparatory work in developing the initial set of regulations for public comment, it is the case that the department does work closely with the manufacturers, because these are the people that we're regulating, and in a regulatory process, having a dialogue between the regulator and the regulatee is a key part of developing that regulatory, developing proper regulations. And I think that it's fair to say that that process was that we were not going out and proactively seeking comments from a larger group of people. In response to the Auditor General's report, we're putting in place a couple of key changes to rectify that. The first is that we will be publishing on a website our regulatory plan for the next, I think, 3 years. We're doing 3 years at a time. And then all Canadians will be able to see where we intend to strengthen safety regulations in motor vehicles over the next 3 years. And it gives them an opportunity to identify a regulation that's important to them and provide their perspective to us. In addition to that, when we're in this pre-regulatory phase, we will be making a point of proactively reaching out to, quite frankly, the kind of stakeholders that you listed in your question, and saying, we are working on this issue. Do you have any views on this issue? And if so, please let us know about those views. So we're making a concerted effort to put in place a regime where very early in the regulatory process, because there's work that has to be done before one gets to a set of draft regs, we're telling everybody about what we're doing. And we're
I hate to interrupt you, Mr. Keenan. It's not my style, but I did want to address just one comment that the Auditor General makes about the CMVSS 210, about the child restraints, about the problems with the child restraints, that the department indicated to us that introducing a unique to Canada requirement for anchorage strength in passenger vehicles would be detrimental to trade. So how was that kind of pre-consultation with industry, how is that helpful to Canadians?
We have 1 minute left in this question.
There's been a long history of the evolution of the regulatory standard for child safety seats in Canada and the United States. The maximum weight by which the regulators allow for children in the child seats has crept up over the years. Canada and the U.S. Canada went in similar fashion, usually a bit after the U.S. in terms of increasing those weights. At 65 pounds, which is I think 30 kilograms, Canada came of the view that having children in child seats above 65 pounds was not conducive to effective safety, and that they would be better off in booster seats using seat belts. The U.S. came to a different view, and they have increased their maximum weight for a child in a child safety
and that may be well and good, but that's not
80.
what we have explained to us here.
All right, our time is up on that one. I think we'll probably come back to that, I would imagine. Welcome, Ms. Block. Good to have you here, and you have 7 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I do appreciate the opportunity to be here. I know I have an opportunity to ask questions of our departmental officials when they come and speak to us at the Transportation Committee. So this is a rare opportunity for me, and I thank my colleagues for giving me the opportunity as well to answer questions. And perhaps we'll get back to Ms. Shanahan's questions a little sooner than she might think, because that is one of the questions that I had that I wanted to ask. I've gone through the report. I have a number of questions I'd like to ask, and I'm going to go through them in the order that they appear in the report. So in follow-up to that question, I too was concerned about the comment that was made in regards to the anchorage systems And in particular, the last where it says, while Transport Canada discussed the issue with passenger vehicle manufacturers, it had yet to propose a new regulation or issue an advisory for child restraint users. The department indicated to us that introducing a unique to Canada requirement for anchorage strength in passenger vehicles would be detrimental to trade. And so my question would be this: why is Transport Canada making safety decisions based on the impacts that regulations could have on trade and not solely on safety? And then perhaps speak to Transport Canada's role in terms of handling safety and the manufacturer's role for figuring out how to make money within the safety regulations that Transport Canada might set.
Well, thanks for that question. It cuts to the heart of our mandate. And Mr. Chair, I'd like to say it's great to see the honourable member. I think it was a week ago in the other committee that we were exchanging. I think you ask a really important question, and Mr. Chair, in the work of Transport Canada, we have a safety mandate, we have an environmental mandate, and we have an economic mandate, and fundamentally the safety mandate comes first. It comes first in the priorities that we put in the work in the department, and it comes first in I would say, the articulation of priorities that our minister makes both in public and his direction to departmental officials. On the child restraint system, there is actually I read it in the Auditor General's report, a comment about the impact on trade. And to be honest, I wasn't sure the basis for that. It clearly was communicated by somebody in the department to the Auditor General. What I can tell you is that in safety standards for vehicles, there is a strategic priority in harmonizing our safety standards to the U.S. And child restraint system is one area where we don't harmonize to the U.S., where we have taken a different standard, where we have articulated a different maximum weight for the child in the safety in the child restraint system. And the reason we have done that, because in our estimation, it is the greater effective safety in having children who weigh more than 65 pounds or 30 kilograms to be out of a child safety seat and in a booster seat using the 3-point seatbelt in the car. The issue about the performance rating for the anchor, Canada has it is the highest performance rating for anchors in the world, and we could certainly change it. But our view is that changing the anchor and then putting heavier children in child restraint systems with the anchor is not conducive to safety. A better safety result is getting them in the booster seat with the 3-point seatbelt. The risk is that there is an issue, and that we work on it in the department. And I invite my colleagues to correct me if I'm wrong, but we work on it in the department, and we try to publicize this. And many partners in the country try to publicize this, but the installation of child safety seats has to be done correctly. There are different manufacturers with different requirements. They change by weight, and there is an effective safety issue in terms of having those child seats put in properly. For the larger children, you avoid that risk by getting them in a booster seat and the 3-point seatbelt.
Thank you very much, and I do appreciate the need for Canada and the United States to have standards, safety regulations that are aligned because of the trade that goes across our borders. But I just want to follow up in something that you said in terms of not being sure why that observation might have been raised as a result of the audit that the Auditor General's office was conducting, and it would be concerning to me that perhaps folks working in Transport Canada don't understand where trade and the impact on trade fits in terms of safety. As you pointed out, that's your number one priority, and yet something hasn't been implemented because it would be detrimental to trade. So that's somewhat concerning to me, to find that that would be a reason given to the Auditor General for why something would or would not be happening. I'm going to go quickly, I think, because I'm running out of time, to another question that I had, and this is found on page 15 of your report, section 4. Okay, section 444, and maybe it will get followed up by someone else. Just in terms of the recommendation in developing new or modifying existing standards. And my question would be, is legislation required to get provinces and other private and public agencies to provide collision and accident data to Transport Canada?
We believe that we can make progress in getting more information more quickly from some of our key partners through dialogue and engagement, as opposed to compelling it through legislation. And we're executing a plan to do that in response to the Auditor General's correct observation that we don't have the latest, most complete data.
Very much, and thank you, Ms. Block. We'll now move to Mr. Massey. Welcome to committee, and
thank you.
Good to have you here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you. It's very timely for me to be here, coming from Windsor, auto capital of Canada, across from Detroit, Michigan, where we've seen a number of different issues, Canada-U.S., related to recall. And I'd like to ask the Auditor General with regards to overall, in terms of, I guess, for consumers, it's been very challenging for them versus that of the United States. When you look at our two regulations that are in place, in fact, there's, when you look at the Prius, for example, the recall legislation in the United States led to fines, penalties. In fact, consumers had their vehicles picked up and from their homes and then fixed and then returned. There was investment in the United States related to that as well, too. Meanwhile, over here in Canada, there doesn't seem to be the same type of powers. In fact, the Minister of Transport can't even actually issue a recall. And so I guess one of the things I'm looking at in terms of your submission there is number 10 here, about information about critical safety issues in manufacturers. About 318 recalls between 2010 and 2015 for safety-related issues that were not brought to the department's attention. Would it seem to me, I guess, by this, that basically that the industry standards between Canada and the United States in terms of expectations for recall appear to be quite different for the consumer in Canada versus the United States? Would it be fair to say that we seem to be a laggard when it comes to consumer rights and when it comes to recall, and also what response do we have as a federal authority?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I can't do a comparison of the Canadian system to the U.S. system. That wasn't sort of what we did in the course of the audit. But certainly, in terms of the recall issue, one of the things that we identified was that manufacturers have information about things that consumers are bringing to their attention that they are investigating that they don't always then let Transport Canada know about. And we felt that would be an important source of information for Transport Canada to be able to better understand what the possible defects are. So, I mean, I think really in terms of the 318 that you referred to, I think that was essentially the context of the issue that we were raising, was that there's more information available out there, information that exists in the hands of the manufacturers, and that information would be important information for Transport Canada to help inform their knowledge of possible defects.
Now, and with that, is importantly is number 11 that you have subsequently after that. It's interesting because when you look at the Volkswagen situation, for example, it's safety recalls and passing that information on to, I guess, the vehicle owner actually, who sells the vehicle and the value of the vehicle. I guess in your work, what type of, I guess, what were the pros, I guess, or what was Transport Canada good at, or are deficiencies, are there still there for, I guess, passengers to know if they're in enforcement, if a recall has been done on a vehicle and you sell it to somebody else, or are we kind of exposed in that front? So I guess once again, what we're looking for is if you go to purchase a used vehicle, how much public awareness is there, and how much a role does Transport Canada seem to be playing in passing those recall information items to the new owner, because it does affect safety and it does affect, I guess, the sale of the recall, hence Volkswagen's response most recently.
Mr. Chair, really starting at about paragraph 101 in the report, we go through a number of the things that was happening in terms of safety defect notifications and recalls and that sort of thing. And in paragraph 108 is where we start about the vehicles, and we say on average nearly 8 in 10 vehicles were repaired following a recall notification. So in fact, in this area, we found that Transport Canada was doing a number of good things, that the manufacturers tended to be following and working within the time frames that had been established and the standards that had been established for bringing safety defect notifications to Transport Canada's attention and starting the work on recalls, and then sort of getting as far as they could in terms of recalls themselves. But we identified that, because vehicles do cross borders, particularly after a number of years when the vehicles are older, it can be harder to actually identify where those vehicles are, and that seems to be one of the main impediments that still exists to getting that recall repair rate up above the 80% where it currently is.
Okay. And that's very helpful because there is so many sales that go back and forth amongst consumers as well, between Canada and the United States as well too. Subsequent to that, Mr. Keenan, you noted, it was noted in your assessment here that you had a number of vehicles that had not been, evaluated. They're newer vehicles, and the reason I raised the issue over the Volkswagen and the cost and the value which connects to all this is that the resale value was based upon mileage and a number of different things expressed related to emissions and so forth. And you have 24 vehicles apparently still in a department that were purchased without research and testing. Can you kind of give us an example of what types of vehicles that were purchased? And this is item number 9 that was submitted by the Auditor General here. We've got talks about, as of December 2015, 24 of these vehicles costing over $500,000 remained untested. What types of vehicles are you not able to get the testing for? Are they the ones with more autonomous driving, or are they more ones with emission improvements? So what types of vehicles can you not get to the testing, and is it because of lack of staffing?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In response to that question, the member correctly noted the Auditor General found that as of, I think, December 2015, we had an inventory of 24 vehicles that had yet to be examined. As of about 2 weeks ago, that inventory was down to 2, and those 2 vehicles were Mercedes SL 400, kind of expensive, but we had brought it in to test the anti-avoidance system on it, and I think a Nissan Leaf, which we've been working with the NRC to evaluate its battery performance. We are just bringing in now, I think we bought a batch of 30, so we are always going out and buying a batch, and then we get them in. We work out a plan to maximize the information we can get out of them before we crash them, and then we crash them.
Thank you. Our time is up. It sounds like an interesting job. Buy 30 cars and then do certain tests before you crash them. I have a son who would probably enjoy working in a place like that. All right, we'll go back to Madame Mendez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Bonjour à tous et à tous. Merci d'être.
Welcome, all of you. Thank you for being here with us today.
The crash, following on the crash questions. On page 10 of the Auditor General's report, in blue, there's this sentence: Transport Canada has incomplete collision and injury data and could not demonstrate how research informs safety regulations. This seems to be quite contrary to what happens in the United States, where all their crash dummy testing is very visible and transparent and available, and apparently Transport Canada doesn't have this, and it's not public, it's not available for consultation. Would you, it does not include complete Canadian data, and that the department did not obtain other relevant information, such as insurance industry statistics. Could you comment on this, Mr. Keenan? Is it something that you intend to address. I didn't see specifically in the action plan if there were actions meant to address this, but I would be very happy to hear you bring it forth.
I can't find the sentence, but I would
It's on page 10.
But I would commend the Auditor General for his efficiency in language, because in one sentence he encapsulated two significant challenges. The first is that, as we discussed earlier, Transport Canada is not currently receiving all of the information available in the country on data on collisions, collision factors, etc. That's, I think, his recommendation 4.44. We are acting on that recommendation to, with a strategy to work through the Canadian Council of the Canadian Council for Motor Transport Administrators, to seeking a commitment on the part of the motor vehicle administrators in all provinces and territories to go to a higher level of getting that data into the Government of Canada.
But if I may, Mr. Keenan, that is after actual collisions, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Okay, I'm talking about the testing. When you do your crash testing
that's it.
Okay,
forgive
that's
me,
the other
I'm
part?
taking too long
sorry.
to get to the second part, and this is why the Auditor General sentence is so efficient, because the second problem in that sentence is that while we have a research program, and we generate research through our research program, we rely on research from researchers in Canada, and we rely on international research, including out of the U.S. We have not always been clear and transparent as to sort of what research we're using and how we're using it to inform our regulations. So we have committed that in our regulatory process and in our regulatory plans, we will articulate clearly which pieces of research we're using to inform our proposed regulations. We will include that in the regulatory impact statements that are part of the proposed regulations that go into the Canadian Gazette. So on one end, we're working to pull in more data from the actual experience in collisions and accidents and problems across the country. On the other end, we're committed to make sure we are being more transparent in what research we're using to inform our proposed regulatory measures.
Thank you very much. Do I still have time? 3 minutes? My God. I never run out of time. Well, I'll give it to you after I finish my questions. En français maintenant.
In French now. I think that one of the comments from the Auditor General, going back to the U.S., is that the department often waits for the National Highway Safety Administration to establish new standards before you adopt them in Canada, or adapt them, rather. Since we're waiting for the states to react, I understand that we have different means. They have different means in the U.S., and they have higher numbers. But Canada also has specific things, whether in terms of climate and terrain, that are specific to Canada. Shouldn't we strongly encourage Transport Canada to be more proactive in conducting its research and in writing and implementing such recommendations? You're right. Transport Canada often waits for the United States to develop regulations before writing our own.
A regulatory strategy where we are seeking to get the highest level of safety practical, and in the context of North America, pursuing a priority of regulatory alignment actually facilitates that. In many cases, the Auditor General is absolutely right. We actually work with the U.S. in dialogue, and then once they've settled down where they're going, we will seek an aligned reg in Canada where it makes sense. There are times when the opposite happens. When Canada sees a problem, and Transport Canada sees a problem, we take action, and even though we're smaller and I would say that it's a little harder to get the U.S.'s attention, There are instances where we've moved first to address a safety issue, and the U.S. has followed and aligned to us. One example is immobilizers. There was in 2005, 2006, there was a growing death toll from kids stealing cars, joyriding with them, and in the process of joyriding, driving carelessly and having accidents. So the theft of the car for the sort of teenage joyride was connected to a new source of vehicle risk. Canada, in around 2007, 2008, we required immobilizers. We rolled in a regulatory requirement for immobilizers. That did not curtail the professional car thief going after a Mercedes. It did stop the teenagers, and the death rates from joyriding accidents plummeted. It was actually an improvement in safety on the roads in Canada. The U.S. didn't have that, and I think they're just now in the process of bringing in an immobilizer regulation in the U.S. that matches the Canadian story. I think it's fair to say that there's probably more times where we follow the U.S. than they follow us, but we pursue both in the interest of safety. There are also, excuse me, Mr. Chair, am I running out of time?
Yeah, very quickly then.
I apologize. There's a third class where while we do strive for alignment because it reduces the cost of safety, there are times where Canada pursues a different regulatory standard, and I would note too, daytime running lights. We've come to a different conclusion than the U.S. We think that they add safety, and the maximum weight for a child in a child restraint system, as we discussed before.
Thank you very much. We'll move back to Mr. McColman, please. Second round, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try to be quick, and if I could ask you for short answers. How long have you been the Deputy Minister?
I apologize for long answers. 12 and a half months.
12 and a half months. So the period of time we're talking about here is much longer than your tenure in this position.
Yes.
Okay. When you arrived as the Deputy Minister, did you undertake a personal analysis of the organization, its effectiveness in meeting performance standards, and in particular management meeting its performance standards? Because just like Ms. Shanahan pointed out, this is a shocking, scathing review of this organization. Did you undertake that kind of analysis?
In fact, the Department of Transport is in the final stages of completing a comprehensive review, which is the department's performance in all lines of business under the guidance of the Treasury Board.
How many people work at Transport Canada?
As of January 1st, 2017, 5,034.
5,034 people work at Transport Canada. How many in particular would be allocated to the division that we're talking about here in terms of transportation safety?
I think the whole motor vehicle safety program is around 90, Kim. It's around 90.
Okay. When you read the Auditor General's report, it's nice to come to committees as typically we do, and we're doing a follow-up here in this committee on this issue. It's nice to be able to talk about in a soft way, well, yeah, we agree, and we're taking all these forward. But why wasn't this recognized sooner in this department when you talked to the senior management people? This is a reason that in many ways, people like myself who came from the private sector running our own businesses have such a skewed view of how departments run. This is complete mismanagement. Would you agree or not disagree with that?
I would agree that there are significant problems here. I would agree that they need to be rectified, and the department has undertaken to rectify them and is carefully managing a program to deliver on the plans that we committed to the Auditor General. Across the entire 5,034 people who work at Transport Canada, at any point in time, there are parts of the department and there are programs that are working excellently and there are programs that are working not so well. The Auditor General in our internal audit function, and the function of the Auditor General is to find the problems, to zero in, to describe them and to bring transparency to them and to improve it. And so we are absolutely committed to do better, and we could have done better in the past. I can't speak to what happened here more than 12 and a half months ago, but I can tell you that we are committed to deliver the highest level of performance possible, and when we find problems like this, we take them very seriously.
I don't have a long time left. I'm just, I look around at my fellow committee members, and maybe I'm being like David Christopherson today in his absence, but the reality is this is a hugely concerning issue in terms of how taxpayers' dollars money go towards organizations when discovered by an Auditor General that perform so poorly. I think that one of the things the committee should do, and this is not a question, but I'm talking to committee members now while I have this time, is I think committee members we should commit ourselves to another scheduled follow-up on this issue with this deputy minister and with his key people here, because they've come and have said yes to all of these recommendations. Let's put them down and let's get them dealt with. But we need a performance review of this later on. And would you agree, perhaps my question would be to Mr. Keenan, would you agree to come back and answer a performance review of this committee? This is what this committee functions to be. We are tasked to be making sure that taxpayers' dollars are being spent efficiently in government. And as I said, this is what makes people cynical in the public eye when they see this kind of a report coming out. And I know I'm being harsh. I understand that. But I think it's worth getting you on the record, sir, to agree to it or to say yes to that. Would you agree to it?
Yes.
Thank you. Finished.
Thank you very much, and that is what this committee does, and I think all of us understand that when we see these strategies to comply with Auditor General's reports, we very often follow up with either a letter or a survey or invite them back. So thank you for your willingness to come back. Mr. Harvey, please, you have 5 minutes.
I guess I'm going to start off by just asking a few questions. My questions are concerning paragraph 9 in the Auditor General's notes from today, which basically he is highlighting the deficiencies around long-term planning with Transport Canada, which was what led to the result that Mr. Massey had referred to earlier, with the 24 vehicles being carried over in December of 2015. And so I'm just wondering if you could elaborate a little bit on how some of those can you qualify some of those deficiencies, what he's referring to there, and what's the path forward from that?
Yes, happy to. And it's a great question because it cuts to the heart of our plan for the future work in motor vehicle safety. And as indicated by the Auditor General, when he was looking at this program, it actually had incurred a reduction in that year in terms of, well, at the time he was looking at it, it had incurred a reduction in the funds available for the research program. And so we were sitting on 24 cars. Now, since then, a couple of things have happened. The resources have gone, there's been an increase in resources in the area, and the actual 24 cars that were waiting to be evaluated have been completely evaluated. Most of them crashed. This led him to say that there's not enough of a kind of a clear sort of multi-year plan for the research here. We've accepted that, and we are now working on a multi-year research plan. I should add, by way of context, that when the Auditor General was looking at this function, the Department of Transport was going through some significant acute financial challenges, and that had caused, in that period of time, there was a number of areas of the department where we had to make reductions in planned spending in order to align the resources available to the department to the actual spending of the department. We've worked our way through those financial challenges, and we are bringing greater stability back to this area of the department as well as many others.
Okay. I don't know very much about this 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 area of expertise. So my next question is really just one for my own personal use, but why does Transport Canada buy vehicles to test?
Our view is that we could compel the manufacturer to submit vehicles to us. But
I'm thinking that that's what taxpayers would think that should be happening.
The challenge is that if a manufacturer knows it's going to send, it's like, it's VW, it's Volkswagen to Transport Canada test, they might make sure there's nothing wrong with it, right? And so what we do, like for appropriate testing, it's blind testing. We go in as a mystery shopper,
right? And
we buy the car off a lot, and nobody has any idea that it's going for testing at Transport Canada. The manufacturers can't play games. There's no opportunity for manufacturers to play any games in giving us a tuned-up car to test.
But why would Transport Canada not come after the manufacturers to reimburse the government for the cost of those vehicles?
It's an interesting, you put an interesting question out there, because one of the key things we're looking at Transport Canada is in a number of areas where we provide services to business is actually charging them for that. I'm not sure it occurred to us to go charge them for the cars that we buy.
Because I'm guessing that Transport Canada doesn't generate any revenue off of this, but the manufacturers who you're doing the testing for, regardless of, yes, they're going to generate the revenue whether you test them or not, but they're the ones that are receiving the revenue from it. So I guess that's the reason why I'm asking that question.
We hadn't thought of that simply because the connection between us buying the car off the lot and the service to the manufacturer is not so immediate. But now that you raise it, I actually think we should go back and look at it as a possible area in our future cost recovery plan. I would submit you are absolutely correct. When you take a new car off the lot and after you finish evaluating it and crashing it, it's not worth that much.
Mm-hmm. Usually about $2,300 to $5,000 on GC Surplus.
Well, I
see them on there quite a bit. Anyway, that's it for my questions.
Thank you. We'll now move back to Ms. Block, please, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I'm going to go back to some of the questions that I had identified out of the report. And I'm turning to page 16, section, I guess, 4.47. And I'm looking at a comment that the Auditor General made when he said, "We found that Transport Canada developed some standards with little data to support them." And then he goes on to, the office goes on to give an example. For instance, rear view or backup cameras will become mandatory in the United States in 2018 following a U.S. Congress request to protect pedestrians. Transport Canada officials told us they will follow suit even with limited data and safety benefits. And I'm wondering if you could answer who makes the final decision on the introduction of a regulation like making reversing cameras mandatory? And why would a decision like this be made without the evidence to support it?
Mr. Chair, that's a great question. And on that one, I think I'm going to turn it to my colleague, Ms. Benjamin, to sort of go through the details. I think that's one where there is evidence, but we didn't actually present the evidence, which speaks to one of the key recommendations of the Auditor General. But I think if I could turn it to Ms. Benjamin to sort of give additional background on that case.
Okay. At this point in time, when the audit was being done, we were still gathering data. It is difficult when it comes to rear view cameras because when it comes to collision data, it's gathered for vehicles on the road and not vehicles in parking lots or vehicles in driveways, which is where most of these collisions occur. However, after this point in time, the department did receive more data. The cost of the cameras went down, so it started to shift the cost-benefit analysis, and it made it something that was appropriate to then put forward in regulation.
Okay, I noted that the recommendation made by the Auditor General was that Transport Canada should clearly disclose how it used evidence and scientific research to inform its development or modification of motor vehicle safety standards, and the department's response was you agreed and you had a target completion date of January 2017. I'm wondering if you could give us an update on that, given that you had that target date?
So we've changed on that particular recommendation to implement our commitment. We've changed our regulatory process. So any proposed regulation that we put forward, we articulate clearly in the impact statement the research and the data that we use to inform our proposal to proceed with that. I can't, Kim, what was the first one we've done this on? Do you recall offhand?
Because it just came through in January, we have just updated the process as of the end of January, so we haven't had the opportunity to fully utilize the new process.
But the implication would be that the next proposed regulatory change that Transport Canada makes on motor vehicle safety, you would be able to see in the regulatory impact statement published with it in the Canada Gazette, you would be able to see a description of both the data and the research that was used as the basis for this. And I guess that should be coming soon. I'm trying to think of when, but it'll be coming soon.
So an individual like myself would be able to go to that source and see the data that you've used?
Yes.
Okay. 1 minute. Okay. I did want to ask a question in regards to the Treasury Board. The Treasury Board Secretariat overseeing Canada's expenditure review, and my understanding is that they are. And I'm wondering if you can tell me what has this review resulted in terms of FTEs and financial resources in the Motor Vehicle Safety Directorate?
I think two things. If I heard your first part of your question correctly, and I'm not sure I did, we have completed I think you're referring to the comprehensive review through Treasury Board. So we have completed that process. We have submitted it to Treasury Board. The Minister and I actually presented to Treasury Board ministers a few weeks ago. The final decision on the results of that review has not yet landed by Treasury Board, but we're anticipating it relatively soon. In terms of it's as a result, it's difficult to say what that review will mean for the motor vehicle safety program. However, in the work that we've done, we've ensured that our plans and our proposals for motor vehicle safety that we put forward as part of the modernization of Transport Canada are consistent with our commitments to deliver on the 7 recommendations made by the Auditor General. There's one point I should clarify, and I believe it was part of your question, is that because of the financial challenges that Transport Canada had 2 years ago, there was we had an advisor from Treasury Board. That advisor finished his work about 6 months ago. Gave the department a recommendation for strengthening financial management. We have implemented his recommendations, and so there is no longer a Treasury Board advisor in the mix in the management of Transport Canada.
Thank you, Mr. Keenan. We'll now move to Mr. Badaway, please. Welcome to committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I, like Ms. Block, I'm happy to be here from Trans and stopping in to talk about transport, and it's good to see all you folks again as well. My first question has to do with Mr. McColman's questioning with respect to performance measures and looking at now the regulations that were provided to you by the Auditor General to now, simple question, understand how transport is going to come back to this committee and actually measure the performance based on those recommendations.
Thank you for the question. I think the department would be pleased to come back to the committee at a timing, at whatever timing is suitable for the committee. And at that time, I would propose, and we will have to do the work, but I would propose that we would walk through and specifically lay out and describe the milestones of implementation and action in delivering on the committed plan on each of the 7 areas where the Auditor General found concerns and recommended action. So we would just walk through the 7 and lay out where we are in actual sort of results relative to the plan that we committed to in our response to the Auditor General.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chairman, as well. Ms. Block asked earlier about the basis of which you make your decisions on. And from your answer, I took that it was a triple bottom line approach when it comes to safety being the number one priority. The second priority, obviously, is the other two parts of the triple bottom line, which is environment and economic. So with that, and having a lot of these challenges that have been identified by the Auditor General, going back well past or before the 12-month period, I'm sure it goes months after that, if not years. This approach, is this an approach that's going to be consistent moving forward and obviously set the stage for the measuring of the performance that you're going to present to this committee?
The short answer would be yes and yes. I would add, just to elaborate on this point, because I think it's a really important one, when you have a number of objectives and one of them is safety, where is safety among those objectives? In the operating priorities of the department and the direction of the minister, safety is first. And in an organization of 5,000 people, you'll see as a senior leader, as the deputy minister of the accounting office of the organization, you'll come across a manager who's working with a company that has a safety problem, and an inspector is trying to decide when they take the next step of action on that company. And we do two things. I do two things as a deputy minister. The first is you trust your inspectors and you don't direct them, because that's inappropriate. But we emphasize strongly that you're a safety inspector. Your job is safety. You have to, and some inspectors will be concerned that if they issue an order, it'll put a company under if it's struggling. It's like, your job is safety. You have to worry about safety first. These considerations are valid, but you have to put safety as number one. And so when we see employees struggling, or they're thinking about trade or the economy, and they're in the safety business, we remind them that they're in the safety business. I would say that of the 1,447 employees involved in safety oversight in the department, the vast majority of them understand that they're in the safety business and safety's job one. And but we try and reiterate that wherever possible, because it's essential to the mission of Transport Canada. We're trying to be a world-class regulator, and in that, we're trying to be it's safety first.
Great, thank you. Last question. In response to the recommendation 4.91, Transport Canada stated that under Bill S2, Strengthening Motor Vehicle Safety for Canadians Act, introduced in Parliament in May 2016, new authorities have been proposed that would require companies that make or sell vehicles in Canada to acquire, maintain, and report to the Minister records that would facilitate the identification and analysis of safety-related defects. If the proposed authorities are approved, regulations will be developed to implement approved legislation. Question through you, Mr. Chair, is please provide examples of regulations that the department would develop if the proposed authorities are in fact approved.
Mr. Chair, I do this very gingerly because it would be one could, if not one's not careful here, you could be contemptuous of Parliament, because S2 is actually coming back, I think, for the Tran Committee in the near future, and so we cannot presume the final result in terms of Parliament's treatment of S2. However, should Parliament give royal assent to S2 in something close to its current form, as the member indicated, one of the areas is actually being able to compel companies to provide safety information on a product that's sold in Canada but from their worldwide activities. And this is particularly important for the evolution of new automated autonomous vehicles, for example, where they're deployed for the first time in Canada. There's no safety information on them, but there is in other countries. So we will finally have the ability to pull that in. In terms of the regs, what the regs would do, they would lay out the exact conditions under which the minister would the exact conditions under which the minister could order this, the kind of data that the minister could order, as well as the form, because you need to have the legislation provides an enabling provision, but it doesn't provide all of the details. I'll give you an example. in transport in Canada, we have 52 acts that we administer. We have 350 sets of regs. We try and put the details in the regs, otherwise we would be inundating Parliament with 1,000-page bills left, right, and center, and it would be a poor use of your time and basically a poor regulatory structure.
Thank you, Mr. Keenan. We'll now move back to Mr. Massey, please, for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And continuing with regulations, and one of the things that's been identified is that, I mean, I think it's kind of startling, to say the least, that regulations are a consultation process that should be inclusive. And one of the things was noted that there was no consultative process with, or at least it wasn't as robust as it should be, with consumer groups, with medical associations, the police, just about all the people that you'd want to have some type of, I guess, input as to what they're seeing firsthand with regards to automobile safety and accidents and subsequent responses. It seems to be there's a culture problem here when you see something like that happening. Is that the case, or what has changed specifically to prevent, I guess, regulations without insult from, not insult, but input, which actually can turn into an insult, from consumer groups, associations, and other first responders?
I think that you've hit on a really key issue, and I would suggest that in the past we've made Transport Canada has relied too much on the formal consultation process, and the fact that that formal consultation process is to all Canadians, and that it is the proposals are published in the Canada Gazette, they're published on our website, and we are explicitly inviting comments from all Canadians. And we've probably relied a little too heavily on that mechanism and have not been proactive enough, because that's one where we put it out there for everybody and then we welcome comments from everybody. So we have taken comments from those different groups on these safety matters, and we have talked to them, but what we haven't done is structured a proactive outreach to target them, to sit down with them in the early stages of our research, and also once we go to the more formal stages of the regulatory process, once we've actually put the regs out, to proactively go out and seek their feedback. And I think it's fair. I think it's a better. I think we've committed to do that in response to the Auditor General's concern.
And in which way, though? How have you specifically committed to that? I'm just curious in terms of what structural. Do you have like a now biannual review? Is there contacts with the associations? Or is there going to be focus groups where you actually bring in different associations in the medical professional field? So, for example, is there like is there a pathway?
It will be a combination of those, and one key feature one key change is that we're going to be more consistent in actually reflecting what we hear from these different groups and capturing that and actually communicating that to others to add transparency to the process. I think at this point, Kim, you may want to jump in and add a few more details on what we're doing to deliver on this commitment.
Okay, so there's a few different places where we are making some changes. We've always had a forward regulatory plan on our website, but it has been there for regulations that are in the drafting stage, so that we've committed that by the end of April, we will actually have a 3-year plan on the website that shows the regulations before they get to the formal drafting period. In addition, once we get to the point where we start to send out policy papers...
I guess I just want to be clear while I have last moments of my time here. I was talking about how we go out and get in touch with first responders. Yes, and, I'm not talking really about websites and those things. I mean, I was looking for, specifically concrete action plans on outreach and follow through dates and so forth. I really don't need to hear what's on transportcanada.ca and those things. I mean, I think that type of an approach probably was the culture that led to probably the lack of consultation in the first place, as opposed to, soliciting a specific way to get first responders and others, the police, for example, into actually a formal consultative process and a pathway to that. It appears that we don't have that plan in place. Thank you, Mr.
Time is up, but I mean, would you want to respond a little bit to that?
I was just going to say it's a multi-pronged approach, of which the first one was the website. The second is that as we do get to the point where we are starting the policy discussions, we will be formally going to each of the key stakeholders that we think would have an interest, anyone who has come to us or anyone in a list that we've been developing.
And you're encouraging that type of feedback from the first responders, from okay.
Yeah, so as we go to the policy side of things.
And just to clarify, we'll be proactively reaching out to them in the future and our future regulatory initiatives, where before we waited for them to come to us, now we're going to go to them.
Thank you. Mr. Lefebvre, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to continue on the question with respect to my colleague, Mr. Badaway, raised with respect to the manufacturer's processes to identify and report defects. I know that there's this, as a project, the projet de loi, there's a bill that is going through the House, S2, that is coming up. But I'm looking at Mr. Ferguson, your comments as to when it comes to the manufacturers, because in your report at paragraph 10, in your opening remarks, you say that manufacturers, that's the middle of the paragraph, so manufacturers issued 318 recalls between 2010 and 2015 for safety-related issues that were not brought to the department's attention. And then you say, well, the department did not have the authority to assess whether manufacturers implemented effective processes for identifying and reporting safety defects, and this limited the department's ability to investigate defects and protect Canadians. Now, if they don't have that ability, in your recommendations, you recommended that they should request information from the manufacturers on their internal processes for identifying and reporting safety defects, and the Transportation Department said, yes, we will try to do that. So, and this recommendation was being implemented by January 2017. So that date has passed. So I would like to know, have you implemented this recommendation? So that's actually recommendation 4.94 of the Auditor General's report.
So, Mr. Chair, I think there's two parts to that. We have taken in this matter, we've taken some steps that respond directly to the recommendation of the Auditor General. That we get manufacturers to provide information on their internal processes. We've written, I believe, to all of the manufacturers, and I can't remember, have they responded yet?
That's what I'd like to know.
At this point in time, about a third of them have responded in terms of giving us the information. The others, we're still under negotiations with them. They have some questions and we're doing some back and forth. We expect the response rate to be very good on this, but we don't have all the information yet.
So you'll be agreeing with me then that this recommendation and your response that so the January deadline has not been met. You went out and you tried to have requested the information. They have not come back to you yet.
That's correct. Our agreement was that we would start the process. We would make the request by January, and we did do that. Now we're trying to build on that and bring it a further step to see what we can get and how we can use that information if and when it all does come in.
Can you provide us with examples of what the ones that have responded and the one that have respected this, with some examples of what they have provided you with?
I can't give you.
You don't have that information?
I don't have that detail with me.
Okay, because it's one thing to say yes, we will participate, but then if they don't give you anything concrete, it's just smoke and mirrors.
Yeah.
So I guess back to you, Mr. Ferguson, what can we do here to ensure that, to go back to the Minister of Transportation, to ensure that this is respected? So basically that the follow-ups are done and that we can make sure that there's actually something tangible behind this.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And maybe I just want to start this with a little bit of a preamble, if I could, which is, you know, my sense of what we've heard today goes back into a lot of the history, perhaps, of this program in Transport Canada. And I think that it has very much been a program that has been concentrating on who's doing the regulation, Transport Canada, and who are they regulating, the manufacturers. And now, through these steps that Transport Canada is going to put in place, I think that's going to be an effort to shift the emphasis onto for whom are they doing the regulation, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not just who's regulating and who are they regulating, but it's for whom are they doing the regulation. Yep. And getting this type of information from the manufacturers about their processes, about the types of defects that they're looking at, getting information from other stakeholders, all of those types of things, I think, are will be a good approach to shifting that emphasis onto, you know, for whom are these regulations being put in place for. And I think we've heard before, you know, about the department coming back and talking about that. And I think what they are going through is perhaps a shift in emphasis in how they're going to do some of this regulation. So I think the idea of them coming back later on and explaining the progress they've made and being able to demonstrate that, I think would be a good step.
Thank you. Now, just very quickly, I just want to understand this, that this is a voluntary, so the manufacturers only have to do this voluntarily, because in your comments, Mr. Auditor General, said the department did not have the authority to assess. So my first question is, who does have the authority? Does anybody have the authority? If so, again, I just want to be reassured. Is this only voluntary, or nobody has the authority to even ask this? But so we're just hoping that we're going to collect this information.
If you'll permit me, Mr. Chair, I'll take a shot at answering this. This was a clear request. The companies are complying on a voluntary nature so far. We're tracking who is and who's not. This speaks to Bill S2, and should Parliament should S2 receive royal assent, then Transport Canada has a much stronger set of authorities and powers to compel information from manufacturers. We put the regs in to affect that. And for example, there's a new administrative monetary penalty scheme in S2. Once we've put the regs in for the information requirements, should a manufacturer refuse, then they would be subject to administrative monetary penalties by the department. But that's only after S2 comes into force.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lefebvre and Mr. Keenan. Mr. Genereux.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I won't take the 5 minutes. I'll give a bit of a preamble and then just on to one question for you. First of all, I think you've gotten off a little bit easy on today's committee, mostly because we had requested you to come, as you know, a few weeks ago, and we had two of your representatives show up. Being in opposition, we don't get a lot of time to sit here and question deputy ministers, and it's important that all deputy ministers show up. And you know, a lot of what we've talked about today, you weren't there at the time of the audit. However, you were there to make the decision to not bring yourself to this committee and to send two representatives. I would recommend that when and every time you come back before this committee, that you come back, because not only has that set us back. We only get 2 hours in this committee meeting. That's now set us back. We had to cancel that meeting. The Auditor General's time, we've now had to push our entire agenda back, equivalent of a week because of that. So there was no comments at the beginning about that, and I think that I guess at this point we're kind of into the committee, so it's kind of late to apologize, but I would just want to highlight how important it is that deputy ministers show up before this committee. That being said, move on to my question. You're welcome to address some of that in your answer back. Reading from number 8, Ms. Shanahan was the first to bring this up, but reading from point number 8 in the Mr. Ferguson's statements today, where he said, Transport Canada was aware that child seat anchorages could fail under certain conditions, but it had not proposed a new regulation or issued an advisory by the audit completion date. The department stated that introducing a unique to Canada requirement for anchorage strength in passenger vehicles would be detrimental to trade. Now, to me, and to I imagine a lot of parents across the country, that's a pretty callous statement to be said about your department. I recognize the impacts on trade. However, a lot of today's discussion has been about how you react to the trade implications that are through the U.S., but you gave us one example of approximately a decade ago of when the United States reacted to us. Curious as to what the percentage of that is that we forge the direction, but also is there a connection within your department with international trade? Is there at least I would hope a monthly meeting of some sort of connecting the two departments, because it seems here that your department, you highlight safety mandate comes first, but your department is largely reacts to what the International Trade Department does, with the exception of that one example. So I'll leave it at that for you to comment, and thanks for the time.
Mr. Keenan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the member raised a number of key issues. The first is, I would like to say that I apologize. There was a miscommunication between the department and the committee, and we thought in the last meeting we had sent officials that were aligned to the expectations of the committee. It turns out we were woefully wrong. I apologize for that. I am happy to be here today, and I am happy to return at the committee's convenience to follow up on the matters in this report or in any other matter that the committee sees fit to let me say, bring some sunshine into the operations of our department. So I'm very happy to come back at your convenience. You raised a number of really important questions related to safety performance. I would come back to the point that we continue to emphasize as the head of the department, continue to emphasize in engaging in our safety officials that safety, there's lots of considerations. Safety is the top one. And we come to our safety regulations, we come to our safety inspections, we come to our compliance and enforcement on the basis that safety is the key priority. On the issue of the child restraint system and the car seats, the fact that those test results you're referring to is one of the reasons it contributes to the Transport Canada's view that for a child of greater than 65 pounds or 30 kilograms, they are safer in a booster seat with a 3-point seat belt than in a child restraint system. And that's an area of permanent divergence between Canada and the United States in the regulations of child restraint systems. And the reason for that divergence is on the basis of safety assessment on the part of Transport Canada, and we think that the Canadian regs generate safer outcomes than changing them to align to the U.S. So we are purposely not aligning to the U.S. despite the cost of doing so, because we think it's safer for child restraint systems. I think it's a fair point to say that the immobilizer example I used is something that Canada did years ago. The U.S. is just doing it now. And I would concede that there are multiple examples on the other side. The U.S. has put in place regulations for electronic stability control in heavy-duty vehicles. There's a really solid body of evidence that electronic stability control is effective in reducing accidents, deaths, and injuries, and that we are looking at following the U.S. in that matter. We've looked at their studies and their data, and when we do bring it, we haven't brought it to CG1 yet, have we? No. It's in one. Okay, so when we put it in one, we probably didn't put all of the studies as clearly as we should, because we've just put in place that. But once we do the revised reg for CG2, we can commit that we will actually have in the revised RIAS, Regulatory Impact Assessment Statement, we will have the data and the studies to support moving with electronic stability control in heavy-duty vehicles in Canada. But I do concede that's one where we are coming in a bit after the U.S. And in fact, we are using some American data and studies as part of our data set because it's more efficient than just replicating it for the sake of replicating it in Canada.
We'll now move back to Ms. Shanahan. She's the last one I have. Mr. Massey, did you have another, or you're good? All right, so unless you indicate, Ms. Shanahan, you may have to summarize everything here.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Yeah, usually I like to focus on things like the performance measurement, things that the Auditor General has brought up to us in the past, the quality of data collection, the focus on the end user, on Canadians as well, on the people that receive government services. I think that's absolutely critical in this stage. But when we're talking about public accounts and just looking at the efficiency and effectiveness, usually we can talk about action plans and measurements and milestones and so on, and that gets the job done. But I'm afraid in this case, I have to come back to really what is the essence of the work of this regulatory body, and to come back to how the work is actually initiated, and that's in the stakeholder consultations. So if we return to 4.30, the Auditor General has noted that in the paragraph where the Auditor General notes that frequently, Transport Canada frequently did not seek input from stakeholders other than manufacturers. This meant that there were little opportunity for others to influence regulatory initiatives, and indeed, the department, in particular, the department did not issue public notifications of regulatory proposals for 2 of the 3 regulations that are discussed in the report: the lighting system, retroflective devices, and the side door strength. The only one that had a notification was the occupant protection in frontal impact. So something like just what we witnessed here today when my colleague talked about, well, why don't you ask the manufacturers to reimburse you for the cars? Like, that's something that could come out in an early, round the table, let's talk about what we need to be doing kind of thing. And where you, I am afraid, because we're talking about long-standing practices. This is an audit that covers the period from January 2010 to September 2016. Long-standing practices with what sounds like a small group, because my colleague, Mr. McColman, identified, asked you about how many people work there. It's about 90 people, am I correct? Again, we see the statement repeated in several places that it appears that manufacturers may have exercised a disproportionate influence on regulatory decision-making and caused delays in updating the regulations. And in fact, it's a concern that some of the safety inspectors were concerned about the companies themselves, whether they would have economic difficulties. So how can you reassure us here today that this is going to change?
Mr. Chair, first and foremost, I agree with the concerns raised by the member in terms of the past activities in the group. We have wholeheartedly accepted the Auditor General's recommendations, and we have already initiated changes. I can tell you that I can commit to you as the Deputy Minister of the Department that we are committed to ensure that we have a world-class regulatory agency, both in terms of the development of regs, in terms of compliance, and in terms of enforcement. And there are some areas where we want to do better, and we need to do better. This is one of them. We are committed to create the more transparent and more inclusive consultation process. We've already launched that in terms of the regulatory process, and we have. I'll be frank with you. We talk lots. I actually make a point, for example, whenever I'm traveling in the country, to sit down wherever I'm in a region. I sit down with the senior management team. I sit down separately with the frontline inspectors, and I ask them what's going on, and I want to know what our frontline, the 1,447 people in Transport Canada who are in direct oversight, I want to understand their world, and I want to ensure that they're actually focused on safety and exercising the discretion that we've given them through legislation and regulation. We are committed
can I
to
stop you there, Mr. Keenan? And I appreciate that you've been in your function now for just a little over a year, right? 12 months or so. Can you tell the committee, have you been brought in on a transformation mandate? Is that part of your role?
It's part of the minister. The minister has a number of priorities for Transport Canada. They start with safety in all domains. They include modernizing the organization. The comprehensive review process we referred to a few minutes ago was an extensive effort over the last year to identify areas where we can improve our regulatory processes. We can we can modernize our oversight practices. I would say that Transport Canada overall does a great job in many areas, but there are areas where actually we need to do better. The Auditor General has found some in motor vehicle safety. Mm-hmm. We're committed to do it in terms of responding to the Auditor General's recommendations. We're also committed to improve the overall performance of the department as we modernize and transform. We are administering 52 sets of acts, federal pieces of legislation, and 350 sets of regulations. There is a need to actually modernize a number of those regulations and to improve the speed by which we revise regulations. Because in all domains, the Auditor General has, I think, has correctly noted that in the world of vehicles, with the advent of connected, automated and autonomous vehicles, the world is changing rapidly. In this area, we're improving our internal management processes on the 7 areas the Auditor General recommended. We're also seeking new legislative authorities in order to, under S2, in order to be able to deliver more effectively on a safety mandate in the context of a motor vehicle world that's being transformed before our eyes. So we are striving on multiple fronts to improve our performance, because quite frankly, if you want to be world class in regulating something, you always have to be improving, and you always have to take on board where things aren't working like they should, as the Auditor General discovered in this area.
And I appreciate those remarks, and indeed, we're entering a whole new world. On that note, my last question is for the Auditor General, Mr. Ferguson. Are Canadians at risk with what we've heard today, with your report, with what we're looking at down the road? Are Canadians at risk when they get into their car?
Well, being somebody who drives quite a bit, I think that we do have to put this in the context of, driving is something that has become safer over the years, and I think that's a reality. But I find it quite concerning that, again, some of the regulatory changes we've identified in this report would take 10 years. And the state of change in the technology now is such that it doesn't wait for 10 years. So, I think the department has a very significant challenge of making sure that it can adjust its regulatory approach to something that is more nimble, so that it can keep up with those types of changes. I mean, when I look at this regulatory system overall, I see one that, in terms of things like lighting standards, is written in a way that, in fact, sort of prevents some of the new innovative lighting approaches to be used in Canada, but then, on the other hand, doesn't prevent other types of new innovations in vehicles related to the autonomous or semi-autonomous. And I'm not saying that it should or shouldn't prevent something. Mm-hmm. I'm saying that when you look at the overall regulatory system, on the one hand, you see that it can impede some innovation because of the way some of them are written, but then on the other hand, it lags innovation as well. So I think the department has a significant challenge, again, of making sure that it can have a regulatory system that can be nimble enough to adjust to how quickly the technology is changing in this area.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Shanahan. I think that pretty well completes the you had one question, Mr. McColman? Sure, absolutely. Yeah, we have some time.
Yeah, it's just has to do with S2, because I know it's at first reading in the House. And I just wonder, I know it's a government bill. Can you give us the estimated ongoing financial cost in terms of S2 if it is turned into legislation?
I'm sorry,
turned into law? Sorry, it is legislation.
It is legislation. I'm sorry, I can't give you that number at this time. I apologize. I don't have it with me.
Okay, thank you.
Would that be the type of information that you could get back to our committee on?
We'd be happy to.
Must have those estimates. Well, thank you for coming. I just have a couple comments and one question. Thank you for your apology, by the way, for not being here previously. You know, we sit here and we bring Transport Committee before us, and we know that you're trying to make vehicles safer and give confidence to the Canadians out there that are purchasing vehicles that they're safe. I think we all know, especially after last weekend, that we're only as safe as the driver who's behind the wheel. And there in the United States, where you had someone texting as he's driving, there is no vehicle that's going to take the risk out of everyone on the road when it comes to that. So, but it is important. It's vital that Canadians know that manufacturers have been through a safety regime that they can be confident in. Do you work and use studies, I think I know the answer to this, with our trading partners? So when we export these same vehicles to the United States, is there one group above Transport Canada for the entire, like for the United States and you, where you take their, you've said that they've accepted your research, you've accepted theirs. Is that typical, I guess?
In the context of, I would say that in the area of transport and in my experience in government, a number of other domains of the government, being smarter about using all the research in the world has been a growing trend in regulatory authorities. So in the area of transport, we do work closely with our U.S. counterparts at Transport Canada, sharing research. There's a 10-to-1 ratio. There's a 10-to-1 kind of gearing in a Canada-U.S. dimension. So there was greater resources in the U.S. for this kind of research than in Canada. So it would be irresponsible, if you will, not to use it.
Not to use it.
At the same time, we have a Canada-U.S. exchange of research and finding and data. And sometimes, even though we're smaller, sometimes we can make a big difference. I think when Transport Canada, when the safety officials in Ms. Benjamin's area discovered the problem with the RAV4, we jumped on that first, and that recall has saved, we believe, has saved lives and serious injuries in Canada, but it's done it around the world. There's also a UN system on road transportation safety, and there's UN standards, and there's a lot of research that is many countries sort of share under the auspices of the UN governance on this matter, that it also contributes to us being able to bring a lot more research to bear in making our regulatory decisions than we could ever possibly afford in Canada alone.
So do you give the manufacturer, I assume that you go out and buy these 30 vehicles and crash them, but do you give the manufacturers, they're doing the same thing, is that correct? Like they're engineering these vehicles, they're doing crash tests as well, they're trying to live up to the regulations that you have, and you're making sure that they've done that, right? So they're spending a fair bit of time and effort as well, trying to make their product not, have that black mark from Transport Canada as an unsafe vehicle.
Yeah, the answer is yes, we pull information from manufacturers and from other government agencies. The U.S. agency, I don't know how many vehicles they crash, I'm pretty sure they crash a lot more than we do, Kim? And manufacturers do, I mean, they have a lot of information as they're developing, and they do their own crash testing for sure. In fact, we have a center in Blainville, Quebec, our crash test center, the place where we crash all our vehicles. And in fact, it operates under, we have a private company that operates it on our behalf, and we actually, in order to have that private operator actually will crash test vehicles on behalf of companies using that facility, and then we actually, it's a way of us, it's not quite the same as getting the companies to pay for the cars that we crash, but they effectively pay us for using our crash test center for their research. All right. Well, we can use the same one, and we just got to get them to pay for the vehicle.
Yeah, I'm not sure you do. I may respectfully disagree with Mr. Harvey on that. You know, I know what happens when you all of a sudden give government the ability to abscond, you know, after they've done all their crash tests, and now you're going to have them, 30 vehicles, and next year it'll be 75, and the next year 90, and these guys are all for every level of vehicle that they have, I would assume. But anyway, we hope that the mandate that you've received from the Auditor General through his report and that you've given to us today, you're going to meet, and we look forward to another report on the performance, on the way that you're coming along with these new methods of making sure that we have safety within the automotive sector. So thank you for being here today and clarifying that for us. We're going to suspend for about 2 minutes, and then we're going to come back to committee business. It should take us less than 2 minutes just to pass one quick motion so we can come before our Wednesday meeting. So we will suspend. Thank you all for your presence here today and for the words that you've given us.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We'll call this meeting back to order. We are in public. We didn't go in camera. We're going to just take the last few moments to deal with committee business with one motion that has come up, and I'll maybe just have our clerk brief the committee again on why this motion and why the need to do it quickly.
Thank you, Chair. Basically, it's because the members of the committee decided they wanted to study the main estimates from the Office of the Auditor General this Wednesday. Now, every year, some documents are tabled in the House, and most of them are referred to this committee, but one is not. So the main budget principal des dépenses, the main estimates for this year were tabled, and they were on March 21st, and they were referred to the committee. So that's one thing. The departmental plans, which used to be the plans and priorities, were also tabled on March 9th, and they were referred to this committee. Now, another very interesting document that's part of the end of the budget process, the performance reports are tabled every year, but they are tabled in the House, they are not referred to the committee. So since this document has been available since last November, I think, last fall, and it's this one, the one we would be studying is the performance report on 2015-16. So it's the end of a year and a half ago. So in order to study that, we just need a motion saying that we want to do a study on this. So those three documents would be part of the main estimates process.
Okay. And maybe just to our analysts first, they just wanted to make one mention or very short little presentation.
Thank you, Chair. And just really quickly, though they were not referred, that's a procedural matter we're not quite familiar, but we have already prepared a briefing note for the estimates. That briefing document includes the as it's now known, the departmental plan, as well as the performance report of 2015-2016. So that's already included in the brief. It has been translated. We are preparing. I don't know if it's been distributed, but so it's ready. So these are in the briefing note, and questions and analysis pertaining to that are included. So we just want to let the committee know.
All right, Mr. McColman.
Mr. Chair, I'm pleased to put the motion to the committee that pursuant to Standing Order 108 in brackets 2, the committee undertakes a study of the performance report 2015-16 of the Office of the Auditor General of Canada.
All right. Are you ready for the question or any other discussion or debate or okay? All in favor then of the motion? Any opposed? It carries unanimously. Mr. Badaway.
Mr. Chairman, just something, and I know I'm new on the committee here, being on my first and only time here, and usually I'm on trans infrastructure and communities as well as scrutiny regulations. One thing that caught me by surprise today was the fact that there was an opportunity, and it was taken by the chair, yourself, to make comment to some of the discussions that were happening, especially in particular as it relates to the witnesses. And my question is that normal? Because I know on my committees, the chair doesn't give opinion, albeit as a conservative, or in my other committees as a liberal. It can be taken as being partisan, and possibly not. However, I guess the norm is that the chair usually chairs the meeting,
right,
but doesn't give opinion. So my question is it normal for this committee that the chairman usually gives an opinion?
Yes. The quick answer is yes. We have a chair's prerogative, and what we do also, many of the times I will sit here and I will ask my analysts, is there a question as we prepare our report that we need asked to get the response that hasn't been hit on? And, I think if you go back and look, first of all, we're a very nonpartisan committee, and typically you'll never get a partisan comment. If I have a partisan comment, we pass that on to the other parties to make.
And that's actually what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
And with that, my second question would then be, does the chair get a vote if it's not a tie, or only when it's a tie?
No, only when it's a tie.
Yeah. But yet the chair can still give comment on debate.
Yeah. Yeah, he can give. A chair can give comment on whatever. In fact, the chair can say absolutely anything unless there is a point of order. Mm-hmm. And then if there is a point of order on what the chair says or what on anyone says, then it can be called into question. There's the challenge of the chair. So typically. In fact, to Dylan today, I asked, is there something that we need to bring up that you may want to have in a report? And so that's the way that we operate here.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, Mr. Massey.
Well, I was just going to reinforce that as the nutrition of the House and also other committees as well too. We'll have that at industry or innovation at times.
Yeah. In fact, I would really encourage you to go back in Hansard and look at when Mr. Christofferson chaired this committee, and I'm sure you'll find out there was an occasional comment made. So, in a way, thank you though for the question. And yes, go ahead, Ms. Mendez.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Actually, to go back to your point, Vance, we and Phil McColeman is the only one here right now who was with us then. But this is very much actually how the British committees work. The chairs have a great deal of leeway in how they ask questions and they direct questions of witnesses. And we're trying to become a little more British. So we're adopting that here. But yes.
Good. Thank you, though. And we are adjourned.